Okay, got it. Good morning to everyone out there, and welcome to the thesis defense of Mara Ruiz López, who has for her thesis, who has translated excerpts from En clave de mujer, la construcción de la subjetividad femenina en el Caribe, a doctoral dissertation by Doralba Linda Pérez Ibáñez. I would like to extend my gratitude to our readers, Professors Jane Ramirez and Alejandro Álvarez Nieves, for participating in this defense process. Thank you very, very much. This is a lot of work for you, and we really appreciate it. So without further ado, I will hand over the floor, even though I can't really pick up the floor, to Mara Ruiz López, so that she can give us her introduction. And after that is finished, we will then begin to field comments, observations, criticisms, and potential corrections from our readers. Okay, thank you very much again. And so, Mara, would you mind beginning?
Absolutely. Allow me to share my presentation. Can everybody see it?
I can see it.
Good morning. Good morning. I would like to begin by thanking Professor Auerbach for all of his guidance and help during this process. And I would also like to thank Professor Alejandro Álvarez and Jane Ramirez for agreeing to be my readers and for helping me being here today. I do apologize about the slight cough. I will be translating the second chapter of In a Woman's Key by the Construction of Female Subjectivity in the Caribbean by the Dr. Doralba Linda Pérez Ibáñez. Not letting me change the slide. Oh, right here, my apologies. The text, En clave de mujer, la construcción de la subjetividad femenina en el Caribe, is the text that was my apologies, the doctoral dissertation of Doralba Linda Pérez Ibáñez that she used to gain her PhD in philosophy for the Graduate School of the University of Oregon. In this thesis, I translated the second chapter and part of the third chapter because the first chapter itself was more of an introduction of the text. This dissertation talks about the subjectivity and objectification the Caribbean women endure based on corporality, and Pérez Ibáñez uses different literary works from various Caribbean female writers to sustain her arguments, which is why I was intrigued by this work in the first place. As you may know, I'm an avid reader. I do not have any academic experience in critical literature. However, I do enjoy literature quite often. And this dissertation expressed many of my political concerns. And that's why I feel that this text, I chose this, and I feel like it is important because it can motivate non-Spanish speakers into venturing into the world of Caribbean literature. There are many Caribbean works that are not translated in English. However, there are some that they do have an official translation. This could motivate those to explore this genre in more depth. I also mentioned in my proposal that I was going to translate the part of the third section in the third chapter of Doralba Pérez work. However, in the end, I eliminated this because it was a short excerpt. It was also felt like incomplete, and it didn't really, and also exceeded the word amount, the required word amount. I would also like to mention that Doralba Pérez, she is currently the director of the undergraduate research at the Institución Universitaria Colombo-Americana. She has various degrees. She has a bachelor's degrees in modern languages, education, Spanish. She has master's degrees in applied linguistics and literature, and she also has, of course, her PhD in philosophy. She also discusses, she uses Ellen Sisu's work, The Life of the Medusa, as a solid base for her to explain the rest of the stories. The stories that are going to be discussed in the second chapter, my apologies, Doralba Pérez will be discussing The Youngest Doll by Rosario Ferre, the Puerto Rican writer. And En Diciembre Llegaban las Brisas by the Colombian writer Maribel Moreno. These two stories have similar elements, and they are meant to discuss the medical discourses that fall upon women. The Youngest Doll is a short story that talks about the old aunt who has a prawn embed her leg at a very young age. It festers her leg and thus stripping her from her beauty and nullifying her sexual life. She cannot marry, she cannot have children. And this creates an obsession for her into making dolls as a resemblance of her nieces. Later on in the story, we see the doctor that it was supposed to be treating the old aunt throughout the years, bringing his son as well to check up on her leg. And that's when the youngest doctor mentions that he could have healed her all along. And he mentions that the reason why he didn't do it was because that prawn was the thing that was paying for his studies. He gives the old aunt she is treated as an object. She is a prophet. Later on, the young doctor marries the youngest niece of the old aunt. And later he also uses his power to, as a text quotes, to reduce her to the state of a doll. She is forced to sit on a balcony where passerby would just look at her and admire her as an object, not as a person. That is a similar element that we see in En Diciembre Llegaban las Brisas by Maribel Moreno. This one is a three-part story. However, Doralba Pérez, she focuses on the first part, which is Dora's story, in which we see how Dora is growing up to be a beautiful lady. However, the traits that her body has developed are those by the African heritage. She has curly hair, round hips, voluptuous breasts. And her mother is terrified of this, as in the text it is mentioned. The African traits are seen demonetized, as seen as if they were those of a demon. Therefore, she tries to tame them by combing her hair or tying up or bandaging her chest. However, since she is unable to tame this sensuality, she forces her daughter to marry Benito Suarez, who is also a doctor, as in comparison with the youngest doll, who also uses his medical power to reduce Dora also to the state of a doll. He continuously drugs her and he mutilates and abuses her body constantly. And we see how Dora also doesn't fight against this oppression. In the third chapter, there we discuss the stories I gave you, All I Had by Zoe Valdez and La Estrategia del Chueca by Rita Indianas Hernandez. In these two literary works, they discuss more of the political discourse that fall upon women. I gave you All I Had, being about the Fidel Castro's regime, while La Estrategia del Chueca being about Rafael Trujillo. The Zoe Valdez is well known for being a blogger and an anti-communist. She would have her family speak in her house ill about Castro's regime, and they would constantly tell her not to repeat what she hears at home outside. Yet in school, she would hear completely the opposite. She would see that everybody would treat Castro as a hero, and thus, in the end, she became the anti-communist she is today. In La Estrategia del Chueca, Rita Hernandez, she is the most contemporary writer. She is considered by the newspaper El País one of the 100 most influential Latino figures. She also is a singer, and La Estrategia de Chueca is one of her most important works in her career. She usually uses a lot of controversial themes such as sexuality and her queerness. She is also queer. I would also like to mention Hélène Zizou, because her most important essay, The Life of the Medusa, which is well known for expressing the systematic oppressions that befall on women based on the patriarchal figures. It also talks about, empowers women to use their bodies as a form of expression, as we see in the stories that their bodies are being controlled, their expressions are being held. And also there was a curious thing that caught my attention, was how Hélène Zizou would mention how that women hating on women, although this is not directly expressed in the text, it is highly implied when Doralba Pérez mentions that women become the replicator of the system that oppresses them. They normalize this, they do not fight it, and they teach their daughters and future generations that this is what they must follow, that this is the norm, and they are frowned upon when we have any of the characters or any stir away from that mold. Unfortunately, we do not get to discuss more in depth. I gave you all I had, and that's what they had at Chueca because the translation ends before we could actually get a deeper analysis of these stories and also to have any more biographical points of these authors. Nonetheless, I do feel like it's a good motivation it's a good starting point to motivate those to proceed with reading. For the translation challenges, this text itself was very challenging as a whole, but I would say that the challenges were quite repetitive. One of them was the quotes. This text consisted in many quotes from many texts from various authors as well. I believe that one of the biggest challenges that I have was finding which of the texts had an official translation, how many translations that they had. If they didn't, I would have to provide my own, such as, for example, in The Youngest Doll, I stumbled upon 2 different translations, one of them found in the Kindle store and the other one found in the JSTOR database. The reason why in the end I chose JSTOR is because when we go to the second chapter, the first quote that we have of The Youngest Doll would that say, he made her sit in the balcony. And in the Kindle version said he made his wife sit. I felt that when he said he made her sit, it would still give the impression that the story is focusing on the youngest niece, while the one that said he made his wife sit, it would give a small focal point to the young doctor instead of the niece. Also, the story of En diciembre llegaban las brisas had no translation whatsoever. Therefore, I had to translate every single quote that was presented in the story, and it was rather challenging because since it's a novel, I wanted to emulate as much as possible the voice and style of the author to give more authenticity to the text. That way the reader would feel like it's actually reading part of the story and not expose that it was in fact a translation. I wanted it to feel as natural as possible. Also, there were various texts that had no translation of the text itself, but it did have translation of the title. And there were also moments in which I would find in the researches that even though that there was no official translation, there was a provisional translation. For example, En diciembre llegaban las brisas would be The Breezes Arrive in December, or another work by Marvin Moreno that would be Algo tan feo en la vida de una señora bien. That was later, the provisional translation would have been Something so ugly in the life of a fine lady. Another challenge that I faced was the incorrect information. Although it was not as often, I did find some elements that were incorrectly shown. For example, when we are discussing La Estrategia de Chochueca, it is shown that Doralba Pérez mentions that this novel was published by Isla Verde. However, that was incorrect. In the cover itself, it shows that it was in fact Isla Negra Editores. And another challenge that was present was whether if I should leave the term in its original language or not. The reason was because sometimes I could feel that there might have been an equivalent word that could have been translated, or sometimes I would feel like there were just no words. For example, one of the words that I almost leave in its original language was señoras bien. Usually there was no direct translation. However, the term that I found most similar to the meaning was fine lady. In the end, I left it as fine lady because, as I mentioned, as I just mentioned, one of the stories written by Maribel Moreno, Algo tan feo en la vida de una señora bien, it was translated to the fine lady. So in order to maintain the consistency during the translation, I left it as fine lady. Another one was the term jinetera, which I decided to translate as sex tourism. I wanted to leave it as jinetera to leave the impression that it was from Cuba. However, it was mostly just a slang term, not something that is exclusive from Cuba. As we see, the sex tourism is present around the world. Another part of the translation challenges that I found were Maribel Moreno's biography. There is a section in the text in which Doralba Pérez gives a focus on Maribel Moreno's life, especially when she was expelled from her convent school for voicing a defense towards Charles Darwin's evolution theories. I initially was going to translate convent school into Catholic school. However, finding an English biography that was similar to the Spanish biography with the same thoughts helped me select the correct vocabulary to provide a more accurate and precise translation. The other term would be the Padilla's self-confession. While finding information about the Padilla affair, I would have translated, if I wouldn't have, I probably would have translated autocrítica as autocriticism or self-criticism. However, self-confession is the official translation towards it. And it also helped me understand more of the feeling, because in the Spanish document that I have found, it felt, yes, it was an impact and literally we're in the writing world. However, in English, it helped me select more, I will not say dramatic words, but more strong nouns to express the impact that this truly had. For example, in the Spanish text, we see that it's mentioned that it caused una reacción, while I have decided like an uproar. A reaction, it could be anything, and it doesn't sound as strong or as passionate as an uproar would feel. Here, as I previously mentioned, the youngest doll, I decided to choose the quotes, the document provided by the JSTOR platform. All of the quotes were provided by myself. In a section of on the third section, Construction of the Female Subject, we see that Doralba Pérez, she quotes Mr. Foucault. However, she in the dissertation mentions that this quote was taken from the Microphysics of Power. However, while I was investigating, I found that it was not the correct article. The English quote was actually present in Foucault on Power. Later, we see the laugh of the Medusa, which was also one of the most difficult parts for me to translate. And although it wasn't entirely incorrect, Doralba Pérez used a collection of essays called La risa de la Medusa, Ensayo sobre la Escritura, which is it's composed by various translated essays from El Inciso. However, while translating the most important part, which would be the one when she's speaking of the Sleeping Beauties and the fate of the Sleeping Beauties, where she describes that their nuptial bed later becomes their deathbed. That part itself was from the article, The Newly Born Woman, which in the end we do not have the exact, not that we don't have the translation for the text, but we do not have the equivalent collection separate in a text. For example, just because, I don't know, my apologies. The collection of essays that Doralba Pérez mentioned, there is no document that has exactly those 3 articles together. I had to find the separate article and then look it up to provide the correct quotes, which again, she constantly mentions that is the left of the images, so it could be misleading because it's not the same article. The following article would be La muerte de la acacia, de la sexualidad y el poder. This one was rather not entirely complex, but I did have my doubts because the title itself wasn't completely translated. It was only Death of the Acacia and then De la Sexualidad y el Poder, and the rest of the article was in English. There was no more English translation towards this. The title itself was an incomplete translation. In the end, I just decided to leave it as if there was no type of translation whatsoever. In the end, it was incomplete. It couldn't be considered official itself. Another quote, it would be the Stephen Salmon quote. It would be located in the conclusion section. This one in the dissertation by Doralba Pérez, she provides her own English translation of this quote, and she presents it in a footnote. I decided to eliminate this footnote and simply incorporate Doralba Pérez quote in the text. And the final section would be the special period fiction. That is because that is a story called Cuban Currency, special period, the dollar and the special period fiction, my apologies. In this section, Doralba Pérez closes the quotation in period, leaving fiction outside of the quotation marks. At first, you may think that this is incorrect, but the reason is that this quote feels incomplete is because she failed to provide the full title of the book. The quotation mark would go between special period and the rest, and leaving fiction behind. Also, the style that she used to quote this part of the book felt incomplete, therefore some ellipses had to be included as well. There were many other quotes that require my attention, of course, but these were the ones that were most difficult for me and the most challenging for me in this process. The terms that I have decided to leave in their original languages would be the term cachaco, which is the term used at the beginnings of the 20th century to describe people from Bogota. It is a term that is associated 100% with Colombia. There is no way that you could get confused of it. It has the Colombian essence. That's why I decided to leave it. The other one would be the character titles. While Doralba Pérez mentions it's discussing En diciembre llegaban las brisas, we have characters like Abuela Jimena and Doña Eulalia. The reason why I left it as with their Spanish titles, it's because when we are watching movies where they're portraying Hispanic families, we see that the characters say Abuela and they say their name, or they say Tia and they leave the name there. It's because this helps the reader and the viewer remember that even though that this is a translation, the setting in which the story is taking place is Hispanic. Habanero is also another term that I decided to leave in Spanish because habanero means from the Havana, so it is a term that is exclusively from Cuba. Now, the most challenging part of this section would be the soy picadillo, or picadillo de soya. I was initially going to translate it as meat supplements, as to the literal meaning, the unpleasant meat supplement that the Cubans had to consume during the special period, the special period. And I couldn't find a direct translation or a direct dish that would be specifically the soy picadillo. In the end, since the soy picadillo, when you search picadillo de soya, it would mostly take you to the speak about Cuba, I decided to just translate the ingredient that will be soy and just leave picadillo, which is the dish itself, given then the cultural essence. And here we find the incorrect spellings, the several authors that Doralba Pérez miswrote their names. We see that Virginia Woolf, she forgot to add the O, and Esther Whitfield, she forgot to place the H after the T, and Michelle Foucault, she added an E, and as I mentioned before, the publishing house Isla Verde, it was actually Isla Negra. And that would be
Okay, thank you very much, Mara. You went through a lot of information very quickly. Okay, I would now like to turn to the readers and ask them to give their own input on this thesis. So do we have anyone who would like to begin between Alejo and Jane?
I don't care.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jane, go ahead. Oh, wait. Okay.
Your face is there, Alejo.
All right. Well, Mara, I would like to congratulate you for reaching this stage of the program, because not everybody gets here. And I'm also glad because I usually get you guys at the beginning and then I release you into the PGT world and I never see you again. So I'm glad that I can see you at least at the exit pack again. And of course, I understand your experience because I was also under the mentorship of David when I reached this stage. So yeah, but you did very good. So that in general, and I want to congratulate you on a good job with this text. I have some issues with the text itself, not with you, because especially because I don't agree with some of the analysis, and because she misses a lot of the analysis, especially with La Muñeca. You made me take out my papeles de Pandora, you know, and check out the story again. It's a story that I had teach at Calle for 2 years. It's a story that I always include in my syllabus when I teach literaria. So it's a story that I know very well. And I don't know, it's a weird thesis. It's a weird dissertation because it has no introduction. It's like the first chapter is an introduction. It has no theoretical model. So you really don't know, you know, what framework she's actually using to apply to this. So it's a really weird dissertation, at least in my view. Or maybe, yeah, I don't know.
And you know, one of the things that, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I
just go ahead.
You know, so that I don't forget later. But you know, when I see the rigorous way that we deal with defenses, and then I see a work like this, and I wonder, and this was for a PhD.
That's right.
I mean, Virginia Woolf.
It has no introduction. Okay. It has no theoretical framework.
Yes, I mean, but structurally, I don't. Yes, I know it was a problematic text.
My point is, it's missing an entire chapter in where do you get your theory from? What do you understand about this theory? And then explain to me how are you going to apply it to the text? This is just straight into the analysis without telling me. What it has not even a historical framework. I mean, Rosario Ferré and Moreno are not the only two feminist 70s writers in Latin America. I mean, there are many others. So, where's the framework? I mean, I guess she did the research. Maybe they just limited her to 200 pages, which is what they're doing now. But I mean, in Salamanca, they would never accept that. I mean, they would never accept this thesis. And in Rio Piedras also, I mean, they would never accept a dissertation without this theoretical anyway. And that's so. My point is, you had a weird text to work with. So and maybe other questions about your quotes is because it's missing things there. So anyway. So I'm going to go straight to it. I really don't have a lot of corrections. I do have one thing to say about the note, the prefacio, the preface, which is missing when you mentioned that that you prefer to translate a text and leave it there. I don't see the text. Do you need to copy paste what you had on the translation and put it there? Because you just mentioned I left this as it was, or I did not translate what, or I decided to translate this anyway, and I don't see it. So then I forget. I forget when I go into the translation itself. I forget. So you need to include that. It's my only point. You need to include some things in the preface that you didn't do, because I really like what you wrote, and I really have no major observations there. I do have some minor corrections. I already sent you my comments through email. I'm not going to stop in commas and article. I mean, this is not the space to do it. You just see it and decide if you want to change it or not. And also one thing, I'm not, maybe I read too fast, but even though you do mention when did you needed to translate the quotes yourself, or when did you actually found a translation, two things. In the translation, you need to add my translation when it is yours.
Yes.
I know you, and sometimes you wrote the title in Spanish, so I know it's you, but sometimes you don't. So I kind of get lost there. But it's just add it. You don't have to do anything. Just add my translation. That's it. It's just a detail. And also, a very important question. The papel, la muñeca menor, you used a translation, right?
Yes, I first used the one in Kindle version, but then I used the document that was found in the JSTOR database. But yes, it's a translation from the text.
Okay. Every time you use a translation, please quote the colleague. I want to know who did that.
Didn't Rosario Ferre? Didn't she render her own work in English?
Maybe she most of her works. Yes.
Okay, but eso no lo sabía. I need to know.
No, and in fact, I think some of the work she wrote first in English and then in Spanish.
Okay, so you see that's an important fact, because ahora yendo a la traducción, prawn is wrong.
Yes, I had issues with that one. I wanted to find the correct term, but since it was the one that she used, it
depends
where you're from. Prawn is very British English. I mean,
yeah, and of course, if you had it from her, and if she self-translated the text, then what the hell? I mean, I cannot blame it on you. But chagara is such an important word in this story. It's like the whole story is mounted upon chagara. I'm going to explain why. It's an indigenous term, first of all. And in a dissertation where you're talking about how the other is separated from the white, well, chagara is there on purpose. The curse of this woman is she uses chagara. Chagara is that other. It's the symbol of what is not European white in Puerto Rico. That's why it's called chagara and not langostino, which is really what it is. It's a river crustacean. It's not a marine.
It's like a crayfish.
See, but when you look at chagara and the tesoro, it's a river crustacean. It's importante because if you realize that Rosario Ferre is very, 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 very ticky-micky, very meticulous. So if you read the first paragraph, the curse of this tia abuela is that she was always going to the river, but this time she goes to the mouth of the river and sees the ocean, and that's her curse. This woman wants to be free. This woman steps away from what a woman should do in the world, and when she steps into the ocean beach, the chagara invades her. You see? Ese simbolismo es todo el cuento. Everything comes from there. So chagara, and she uses the indigenous word. Aquí le dicen gatas también. En Puerto Rican slang le dicen gatas o gatos de río. it's like this, big. So I don't know why she uses prawn when she translated herself, because she loses all the symbolism. Also, la misma autora, not you, la tía abuela does not lose her beauty, but she loses her vanidad. The curse of this abuela is losing her vanidad. This woman rejects all the fake things about her social class. Qué pena, because it would have, that's why authors should not translate themselves. Because,
well, I'm not, and once again, I'm not sure in the case of Rosario Ferre. I'm not a Ferreist in any sense, but my understanding, and I'd have to find out in this case, but that I know that she wrote first in English in many cases and then translated into Spanish. So
well, that's later in her life. When she moved to the States, she started writing in English. For example, the house on the lagoon, she did write in English and then translated herself into Spanish. But it's not all of her work. She started writing. She was part of the independentista. She was the castaway of the family. Casted out. Anyway, es una pena because prawn is not. I know you would never use a. I know you, Mara, would have never used prawn.
I initially wanted to translate it itself.
And you just leave chagara, But anyway, but I know there's a problem there. Anyway. I'm not going to take much of your time, de verdad. I have a suggestion because I don't like fine for bien. Bien is an adverb because a fine lady is a double valuation. It's money and class, and it's also a moral that or where you are supposed to be expected morally, because there are fine ladies who are not fine ladies, but fine it's a moral expectation. Pero bien is just well off. Un niño bien is somebody with a silver spoon, somebody well off, somebody wealthy, so well-to-do. Es un guaynabito in Puerto Rican slang. If there's no moral value in bien. Actually, some people might use it as pejoratively. Niños bien.
Yeah, but I have an equivalent that's used in Puerto Rico an awful lot is la gente fina, and la gente fina is meant in usually a derogatory way, and it's not, and it doesn't mean actually that there's anything upstanding, morally righteous. It just means that they have money. It just means they have.
Por eso, but fine in English. It's a double valuation. It's moral as well as money. So that's what I mean. It's a suggestion. You can leave fine.
Okay. Then maybe we should find something.
No. It's a suggestion. Again, I don't think that's a mistake at all. It's just a suggestion.
Yeah. Well, but I'm curious. Now there's another possibility. Finer.
Oh, well-to-do, well-off. I don't know. No sé.
Jane, do you have any ideas on that?
You can say no. I'll be fine.
I had that same thought that fine ladies also had the idea of, maybe it's because I was thinking of the word refined, but the fine ladies had that feeling of being good people, of being
morally
who
upright,
are worthy of admiration, morally upright.
Okay.
It's okay.
But I'd like to possibly
people who
resolve
wouldn't
it.
use bad language. People.
How about posh? Can we use posh?
I like posh. Posh. Eso mismo.
I mean, it's a little bit British, but it's used in the United States now very much. So.
After the Spice Girls, yeah.
I was going to say, but posh spice makes it cool to be posh.
Pero sí, es que tiene, bueno, nada, maybe I'm just cherry picking.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. Thank you.
I think that I liked a lot about what you did. That hay palabras inventadas que complejizar. What the hell is complejizar? When it's, for example, which you corrected well, ella es complicar, it's just complicated. You know? Y también ella usa sexuado, es sexualizado, because sexuado, all beings are sexuados. We are all sex, even now we talk about gender, we all have a biological sex, that's being sexuado. So I guess she meant sexualizado, which you correctly translated into sexualized. I mean, so yeah, you have a good eye for those little funky errors that she has in her dissertation. You could have left jinetera. It's okay that you left lo tradujiste bien. You can just left it because it's a very Cuban word. In the Latin American world, it's very specific to Cuba, pero está bien. I don't mind that you changed it at all.
Just if I can
see,
this is a pet peeve of mine.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm very much in favor of leaving words in Spanish, especially when they have a special flavor, but give us a break. Make sure that we're told what it means somewhere in a footnote, in the text or something. Don't leave us wondering what in the world is jinetera. Because I speak Spanish, but I don't know Cuban words. I don't know necessarily. I know a lot of Mexican slang. Or Mexican expressions,
and they're also jineteros, like male prostitute, and jineteo. I like the whole thing is jineteo.
I think I would have gotten the idea from context and from ideas along with jinetes, but you know. And the chagara, I didn't know what that was. So just as I think. It sometimes can be done very subtly, but the translation needs to give us, it doesn't need to be a translation necessarily or in footnote, especially in fiction. It doesn't necessarily have to be a footnote. Now, this was a dissertation, so yes, you can certainly.
Yeah, you put it in a footnote, it's fine here. In this context.
But if you're translating fiction, okay, I can see but give subtle clues somewhere in the sentence so that your readers who don't know those terms are not lost. And yes, we'll still get the flavor.
Yeah, like something like it was a chagara, comma, a crayfish. You know,
exacto.
Something like that.
Another thing.
I don't think you have to do that here. I think, and besides, you can't do it in this case.
Exacto.
Because it's already been the damage has been done by Rosario Ferre. So we can't do anything about it.
There's one thing that you did that I actually liked, but then you have to explain it in your footnote. Actually, two things. One, you used the her as a genérico, el sujeto como her, which actually I like it because other intellectuals do it, like Gayatri Spivak uses the her, the she, as a generic she, including male and female, all genders. But you're changing, but you're changing. So you maybe add a little paragraph on why you prefer to use the generic her. I don't, which again I like it. It works very well with what this dissertation is saying. It actually helps the work. But la autora no hace eso. You're doing it's your choice, which I like. Again, I support completely. But you need to explain that you did it and justify it. That's all you need to do.
You mean in your preface, right? In her preface, right?
In her preface, yes.
For Mara's sake, I want.
Yo te marqué, you use the her twice cuando ella habla de su individuo. And en español está en masculino genérico, pero ella lo cambió and I like it. And I actually like it. For me, I have no problems at all. It's being used many lately. Female intellectuals are using the generic her, and that's quite fine. And you actually have the liberty as a translator to do it, because if you feel that it works better for you, you have esta es la tesis. This is when you have to show what you want to do. So you did it, and I agree. Pero hay que poner because of the technicality that is not like that in the original. That's it. That's the only, but I like it and I support that. Also, you use black as a in mayúscula, which means like a gentilicio. Again, I support your decision. But then again, you have to add a comment that you prefer to use.
No, I don't think you have to do that. I don't think you have to do that anymore. And by the way, that's me who uppercased the black or insisted on it. The New York Times insists on uppercasing black in all cases now when you're talking about people. And I don't think that there's any issue with uppercasing it whatsoever, or with having to explain it. I think just do it, because any other group of people. Well,
but white is not capitalized here.
Yeah, so, but there are reasons for that. There are reasons for that because there's no concept of a politicized white identity that goes beyond white supremacism. So there's a reason for it.
That you see why we need then that's my point. That's why you need to add a paragraph in the preface. Okay, none of this issue is in the dissertation. I mean, none of this issue, but it translates. I mean,
yeah, but I think this is very common now. This is very common now, especially in academic writing.
Okay. I'm not against the decision. But since it does translate into a change, you don't know if the author you don't know if the author wanted to use a capital B.
Yes, but
you don't know that.
If you talk about any group of people in Spanish, they're always going to be minúscula. So the thing is that you have to change it automatically in English.
Okay, but the United States has a particular situation in which a race has become a demonym. You see, as in black. That doesn't happen in Spanish. So there has to be some way to explain that, but at least as an academic exercise. No sense.
And I think another point in boy, I agree with both of you so much. I understand exactly what you're saying, David, and I agree with you. But a reason to do what Alejo is saying is the fact that the program is publishing these prefaces, correct? And yeah. I was told that the purpose of publishing the purpose of the preface and the purpose of publishing them is that this will be useful for future translators. And I think anything that we can do to help educate the future translators is worth doing.
Okay, well then can we refer perhaps to either a style guide or to maybe, for example, I mean, just a slight footnote,
that's all I want. That's all I want.
Or to the New York Times article, which was published, I think a few years ago, which states why we have decided to uppercase black.
Mira. Te lo voy a decir, I'm going to explain why. I just translated Yolanda Arroyo Pizarro into English, and I decided to use the capital B because, of course, she's a black Puerto Rican activist, and I know when she speak of a negra, she's speaking of a B, capital B woman, But the editor, she said, I have to confer with the author if she prefers a capital B or not. So that tells me it's still it's not going to be an issue.
Who was the publisher?
It's a Philadelphia-based publisher called Sundial House. They did not disagree with the decision. They just said, I want to confer with the author to.
That's so strange. That's really strange.
But it's so, and of course, I know Yolanda personally. I know she would want the capital B. Of course, I don't even have to call her. I know she would want the capital B. But the author, let's make sure the author wants that capital B. Which isn't I understand the editor in that sense. She doesn't want to have an issue. But I don't know. In 5 years, this is not going to be an issue at all. I mean, probably we don't have to explain it at all. But it's still. you know,
I mean,
un footnote, una oración, usé este manual, usé I use the capital B because I followed this method, period. That's
it wasn't so long ago in the United States where Muslim and Jew were lowercase as well.
And I agree, pero en español, sí, pero no sé. I just no caps at all, period. But you guys in English, you know, always complicating things. Yeah, I know.
I didn't invent the language.
I know. But
you got that from the Germans.
I know.
Heather? Yeah,
I believe we're still in this change period, and again, I'm pretty sure in 5 years this will not be it will not need an explanation, not even a comment by anybody. But I think we're still.
I'll tell you something else while we're on this topic, and I'll be very brief about it. But I have actually submitted a lot of material over time where I've edited translations, for example, that were going for publication. And I have said that, you know, I am specifically uppercasing Black here because I believe that this is the respectful thing to be done now. And I would get check mark, okay, no problem, okay. And then also indigenous uppercase and for the same reason. And okay, you're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. So, you know, indigenous and Black certainly get uppercase nowadays.
Sí, lo sé.
And if you look at the New York Times, you'll see indigenous uppercase as well.
Again, I'm totally in favor of this. It's just that, but no sé, a little explanation. But just because this is an academic work, it's todo. If this were to be published, the reader would not read this. But as the student has to show me why she used the capital B. That's you know, this is
because she has a master loudmouth.
See, but it's her work. It's her work, David.
I know.
So she needs to show me.
That's true. I just had this conversation with one of my thesis students because we were talking about there's a chapter in her book about baseball, and we're talking about the Negro Leagues. And that's the name, the Negro Leagues. That's what they're called.
Yeah, I know.
And when we do Hall of Fame every year, when there's Hall of Fame elections, they're now including people from the Negro Leagues, which I'm very, very much in favor of.
We also still have the NAACP.
Of course.
And although now people of color, but it's not colored people. You know,
right, there's a difference between
that was the original name, and it's still kept that way.
And it's also weird.
Let me finish that my thought there, because we're in Alejo's time anyway. But I'm old enough that I remember when I was taught by my parents, who were very careful about their speech and about not offending people and about equality. They very carefully taught me that the respectful way to refer to a Black person was Negro. And when I was a child, that was the right term. That was the right, it was a child in the 50s.
It changed in the late 60s into the 70s.
So and that just horrifies my students when I tell them that I was raised.
And it's really weird because now Spanish is taking the opposite route. You talk about an Afro-Puertorriqueño. You see, no un puertorriqueño negro, sino es un Afro. We're going to, and people are now starting, and I hate it. So, you know, de color for me, no. De color in Spanish now sounds horrible to me.
Gente de color.
And you know, people of color is coming back in the US English for a while now. But in Espanol, persona de color for me is like No, you don't say that, you know.
But this is that's a different thing, and
I know, but
and also
I think
the usage is completely different, and also even the way it's, you know, the way it's said or written is different.
It's just to give context to the discussion how in English is taking, you know, a route, and how Spanish is taking a different. You don't talk about escritores negros puertorriqueños. You talk about escritores afro-puertorriqueños. You know, it's
Or Afro-Boricua,
which is very interesting, you know, all of this. Anyway, Mara.
We also have Afro-descendant in English.
See, and it's going to start catching, you'll see. Because now they're finally reading the African philosophers, finally, like Achille Mbembe. They're finally making their way into academia, finally. You know, that'll change too. We'll be aware, you know, of... anyway, Mara, para seguir, no tengo realmente, aparte de eso, there are a few minor corrections. I'm not going to mention them here. Están ahí en track changes. You decide if you want to change them or not. De verdad. If they're marked in red, for example, a veces leíste, I heard a word that I hate is combinar, which is not to confine, it's more like threaten, more like oppress. But you decide if you want to change it or not. I really don't want to waste much time with all those things. There are also instances which you actually improve the text quite a bit, and I marked them for you. You'll see in my comments, because she's very, sometimes you lose her, or you lose what she's very ambiguous, and you actually improve and explain much better her thoughts. And I really want to say, because we've been talking about issues. No, there are like 4 or 5 times I'm seeing here when you actually rephrase and explain to me as a reader much better the point that the author is making. And I have to say it too, because you did a very good job in a difficult text. Again, there are other issues. I think also the objections I have is with the text itself, not with you, not with your work. I mean, she could have done so much more in her analysis. And she just stayed a little. Anyway, that's not your problem. Yeah, so the thing is, I need to know when, or better, because you do mention it. I'm gonna be fair. You do mention when you say that you use sometimes you had to translate a text, or sometimes you found a translation. That has to be specified better in the translation itself, which is for me a very minor detail. I'm talking about this because I really don't have major issues with your work. Okay, it's a very good master's thesis. Y entonces, if you can find the actual names of the colleagues that translate of the translations you found, just include them in the reference. That's it. That's de verdad, porque for the rest, again, an article here, a possessive there, a word choice that might have, that's not really important. And if I keep talking about them, it'll really hamper a very nice work. And I really enjoyed this. But de verdad, it flows. You know, as we say in Spanish, it flows. I mean, like I can read your text without stopping to think, you know, so it really was a very good job. And I can see that you really put a lot of effort into it. So again, congratulations. And now I leave the time to Jane so she can have.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to start the same place that Alejo did. Congratulations. I'm sure it took a lot of perseverance to get here, and you're here, and that's wonderful. And also congratulations on an excellent job. This is very good. This is very good translation. I don't know if that was what Alejo was just now saying, but one of my criteria is if I'm reading along and I have to stop and go back, wait a minute, what was that? And read it again, then there's something that could have been expressed better. I had to do that a couple of times with your work. I have to do that every now and then with my own work, but not very often. There were only a few, and your writing was clear. I enjoyed the reading. And when I saw it was a dissertation, I didn't really expect to enjoy it. And I did. So kudos to you. You did a really good job. Now, that doesn't mean it's perfect. And I did have some issues here and there. I've marked a few of them. You've got a few dangling modifiers where the nearest noun is not at all the one you're talking about, but not very many. A few of those I've marked them. There's a few careless errors of repeated words, the or that. I think there was a that, which happens to all of us. I have found that sometimes, and with a thesis, it might actually be worth it. It's good to read it aloud, not too fast either, because in chunks, because your ear will sometimes catch things that your eye didn't. And I caught a few things where maybe you got in a hurry and got writing faster than your eyes could move, and there's occasionally a left out word. But I've marked those. When we're talking, I did want to talk about where in the world you got prawn. And this is another question similar to that, because I presume also you got it from the translation. When the wife was sitting on the balcony, how is that balcony as opposed to porch?
Those terms, when I was reading, I originally wanted to provide my own translation, but then I saw that there were already official translations for it. So yes, all of those were just taken from the official translation themselves. I wasn't really comfortable because I knew exactly that the terms weren't the correct ones, but since it was the official translation, I decided to honor them instead.
Okay, I figured that was why you did it, but
yeah, I just want to say something too, that I think that this is one of the problems that Rosario Ferre has with an English-speaking audience, in that she either writes or translates in English, and sometimes it's not entirely there for me as a reader. There are bits of linguistic interference that I sense, and sometimes it doesn't seem natural entirely. And I think that she would have been a far more important writer internationally if she had written in Spanish and had her work translated by a professional. That's my feeling. Someone will kick me down the stairs for that.
No, I agree, but I'll talk about that as a final word and leave Jane to resume her.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But no, it's okay. It's okay.
Since you brought it up, the thing is that you can't do anything with balcony. You can't do anything. And so
it's just that of the works that are discussed here, the only one that I have read, and it was years ago, is The Youngest Doll. Yeah. And I read it in Spanish. I was new to Puerto Rico, and I was wanting to read Puerto Rican things, and I read it in Spanish. And when I pictured her on a street level porch where everybody walking by would see this high-class woman and be impressed with that doctor. And then when it came out as balcony, then all of a sudden I'm thinking of her up above.
It could be. I mean, the thing is that didn't she live in Miramar as well?
No, but the story is in a hacienda in the town, so it's
that's
like
true. That's true.
It's like the old San Juan porch. O aquí mismo como yo, like my porch. I have a porch. Que yo le llamo balcón.
Porch.
Which leads to the street. I mean, it's not a balcony. It's a balcony because it leads to the street. I mean,
right. I have a balcony here, and it's above the street.
Yeah, we
sit out there, and a lot of times people will be moving by down on the street, and they don't even see me.
Exactly.
And they're surprised if I call to them. So I had always pictured her as sitting on a ground level porch. But again, that's not something that you could have done anything about. I just wanted to ask. I do have two things I want to talk about, just two. One is, I don't know if anybody needs to go there. I have the text here. But I am on the very beginning of chapter 2, which is, oh goodness.
Of the translation, you mean, Jane?
Yes. Well, it's chapter 2. I haven't given you a page number, so it's chapter 2, whether it's the translation or the source text. But in the quotation from Moreno, and by the way, I didn't like it in the source text when I saw Moreno had Moreno on the second line. You can play with, you can put in some enters and make some of those lines above short so that all of her name stays together at the bottom, and I think it would look better. It's not a big deal, but you can do that. But in that quotation, I think you got it backwards. It says in Spanish, it says adora Benito, su esposo. Oh, I don't remember how it is. I don't have the Spanish in front of me. But you supplied the name. Adora no parece. Benito no parecía atribuirle sentimientos or something like that. But then you have, in truth, Benito, Dora's husband, did not seem to care for her or provide her. I think what it's saying is he didn't seem to think that she had any feelings. To think of her as a doll. Dora, Benito no parecía atribuirle sentimiento alguno. I don't remember what the words are. Am I right, or am I missing something? It's that before Dora.
Yes, Adora Benito. Yes, in the original text, the name of it's not explained in that quote that Benito is the husband, because it is already implied where you read the rest of the chapter. The reader already has that knowledge. So I try to shift it in a way that a new reader would not feel lost, but also so it could feel natural. So
you provided his name and identify him, which was fine. I don't have a problem with that, but I still think that the text is saying he did not attribute to her the capacity to feel. He didn't think that she had feelings. And I want to know if I'm wrong. I can certainly be corrected. But
what page are you on in the? Do you have a page number there?
Okay, I have all right. The number on the page is 2. It's the very beginning of the translation. The page of the document is 25.
Okay.
And if in just a moment I can look, that's page 24 of the source text. So I can find that in a moment, I hope. As in the source text, what we have, what you're translating is, en realidad, adora Benito su esposo, in square brackets. No parecía atribuirle sentimientos ni consistencia. To me, that's saying Benito.
Yes, you're right.
Okay, so I think that one needs to be fixed because it's it gives the wrong impression. And I'm going to have to go to I'm going to have to search to find the one other. And I almost don't want to even bring this up because it's such a pain. But it's the word for subjetividad, mecanismos de subjetividad. I am on page, oddly enough, it's page 25. No, I guess it's on page 26 of
it's in the title as well.
And it's subjectivity there. And here you have subjectivation mechanisms. You have subjectivation a couple times. In any case, I would turn it around. I would say mechanisms of whatever.
And then there's also subjectification.
Right. And elsewhere you have it as subjectification, or there's subjectifying. But I looked up in Merriam-Webster, and both subjectification and subjectifying means to make something subjective. It doesn't mean to make something subject. And I find it ironic. It's paradoxical, but I almost think of what needs to be a part of the time is objectification.
Yes, I agree with you. However, you know, I think that the author quotes various critics in English who use the term subjectivity and subjectification, and I think that what we, you know, and before I go absolutely mad with this, because I think I did go mad with it when I was reading it. I think that what we're talking about here is dealing with literary works and focusing on the subjects of the literary works, as opposed to the objectification process that occurs within a patriarchy.
Excuse me.
And so the title, which is Female Subjectivity, means that, you know, we're dealing with women subjects in literature, and so I mean but I'll tell you something. I think the author slipped up a few times in her usage of those terms, and so it became, as I said, I thought I was going to go mad. I really thought I was going to go mad, but then I just ignored it and it went away.
Well, I figured this would be something that you would have talked to. The two of you probably have talked about this, and so I was
not really.
And I don't mind at all that you're talking, David. But I was wondering what Mara had to say about the different uses of in the same phrase, in the mecanismo de. At least once you have it as subjectivization, and once you have it as subjectification, with one with an F and one with a Z. And one of them, I don't remember which, is not even a word according to Merriam-Webster, either collegiate or unabridged. So
Jane, did you make a note of that?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
At the different places in the where it comes up, I wrote notes about what I found in Merriam-Webster, what the definitions were, or if it did not even appear in there.
And you know what? Just as an aside, Merriam-Webster may not have actually all of the most contemporary literary critical terms.
Which is why I go also to Google.
Yeah.
And I also go to, I mean, like somewhere in this one there was the noun imaginary.
Oh yeah,
and that's something that I'm not sure is in all the dictionaries yet. But anyway, so yes, I agree with you. But that's why I also go to Merriam-Webster collegiate, because they do update collegiate more often than they update.
Yeah. By the way, the imaginary as a noun, which is that's originally now I'm trying to think of who actually it was a philosopher who that was taken from, and that was a translation from the French, imaginaire. What? Alejo, you're muted. I'm trying to.
I laugh because we went through that together in mine thesis. The imaginario, like every two sentences.
I hate that term. I hate that term.
And what we saw way back then, of course, that was like 15 years ago. It's
more. That was more.
Shut up.
I was on your.
I know. I think we came up with stock of images. It was way back then.
But it has.
Of course, it was. A lot of time has passed.
And now I remember. It's the translation, the English translation of Jacques Lacan.
Yes,
Jacques
it comes from that.
Is the one who uses this term l'imaginaire, and it was the decision of the translator to translate it as the imaginary. And what he could have done was imaginarium, which would have made perfect sense.
That's beautiful. That's awesome.
Or he could have left it in French as l'imaginaire. But as a result, and I think that this is a mistranslation, as a result, the whole world has been polluted with the imaginary. It's one of the most overused academic terms.
So people seeing this, please take a note, because all the literature departments at the UPR use Lacan in half of their theory.
I know.
So you're going to see the imaginario every 2 sentences. So please take a note of this.
I'll tell you something. After translating 2 books of philosophy, 2 entire books of philosophy, I will say that philosophy is the worst translated subject on the planet. Bar none.
You know, when we called Carlos Fortea, who translated from Germans, remember him? Carlos Fortea, he came from Spain. That's the first thing he did. It's the worst thing. It's how hard it was, because it was so poorly written. So the philosophers are awesome, but they're not writers or philosophers.
That's another issue.
Getting back to Mara's thesis.
Yes. Sorry, Jenny.
I know we all want this. This is so much, Mara. We don't get to see each other. When we have classes in person, not only do I get to talk to all my students, but I stop and chat with Alejo and keep him away from his work sometimes for an hour, because I enjoy talking.
I don't mind.
To colleagues so much.
I never minded that.
I do that to Luis too. Probably do it to David, but we don't often coincide when in the halls, and of course we don't at all anymore. So when we get together, we love to talk. So sorry, Mara, but you're one of us now, or will be very, very soon. So your colleague when you graduate. So anyway, I just checked quickly, and it was the one with the F, the subjectification, that does not appear as a word in either Merriam-Webster, which when you see M-W unabridged in my notes, of course, that's Merriam-Webster unabridged. That one, the one with the F, doesn't appear in either collegiate or.
Okay. I have a question then, Jane. But objectification exists.
Of course it does, because English is a logical language. Whoever told you differently? So when you get my comments, Mara, which will be this evening, because I'm going to go back and take out some of my notes to myself and my codes that I put in to find things that I want to discuss. But I'll send those to you this evening. And when you get to this mecanismos de whatever it is, my comments are not going to be clear guidance. They're going to be all over the place, because this was me looking at this and thinking it through, thinking out loud on paper, if that makes sense, on a digital screen, if that makes any sense. So you decide, but I do think that when you have the actual phrase, you have modos de and mecanismos de subjetividad. I think that's the right phrase. I think each time it's referring to the same context, so it should be the same in both, or in all 3. I think there's 3 different things scattered through there, and I think it should be consistent. But which one's right? Hey, you got me. I don't know. You did a very good job. I enjoyed it, and I'm done with my comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
The one last thing, we're talking about self-translation. There's always a big debate. Right now, there's a tendency, more than ever, of authors that want to translate themselves and
publish themselves. So why not? That's where it's all coming from.
But I wouldn't mind, but now they're actually good authors. So, not just and so.
Yeah.
I would advise against translating oneself. So, I mean, right now I'm participating with the Puerto Rico Literature Project, which right now we're translating poetry massively. I mean, and but they asked for my poems, and I said, well, what can I get your translation? I said, I'm not going to translate myself. I refuse to translate myself. I mean, I will screw up my poem. Oh, but you're a translator and you're a professor. Yes, that's why I'm not going to translate myself, because I trust my colleagues. We're a team of 5 translators. I trust my colleagues. They're going to do a good job. But I refuse to translate myself, because I know, in my case, I'm going to speak for myself. I probably will write a whole new text. I probably will change it and write a whole new thing.
And that's fine.
But that is not a translation, though.
What they want is a translation of that poem, not of
right.
And of course, a new poem, and he'll come up with a new poem. I get that.
And of course, out of respect for my colleagues who have been hired as translators, I have to trust their work too. So that's what I did. Because what I've seen is this: every time, and there are papers. I remember in Salamanca, there are papers on self-translation, because this has happened before. And they compare the versions, and the tendency is to edit, to add, to take out, and and that maybe that's what happened to Rosario Ferrer. So you need to trust. I mean, there are many good translators now. There are many good translators now. In the US, many publishers are hiring good translators. So just allow yourself to get translated. Allow yourself to be translated, and that's my opinion. And
you know what true torture is? This would be what hell would be if it were designed for me to be there. Listening to a speaker interpret himself.
Yeah. Oof.
Because they never remember where they started, where they stopped, and they're always thinking of something that they didn't say in the other language, and trying to go back and forth between them. It's torture. I hate it. I've listened to a lot of sermons from bilingual preachers.
Oh, I see. And
that's when I wish I could get myself out of there.
Okay.
Much better to have an interpreter stand next to you and interpret for you, not.
But I've seen them, the duo. I've seen the double preaching, and they even. And actually, when there's two, it works quite well. One talks and the other follows. It works.
Oh, the really fun thing is what I got to do was, I was in a church where they had interpreters for the deaf, and they really loved it, because they could listen to they had time. They had extra time, because my husband would preach, then I would interpret. And they would interpret me, and they could still be interpreting me when he was speaking again. And it really moved quickly, and the interpreters loved it. But that has nothing to do with Mara's.
Yes.
Either.
Anyway, thank you, Mara. Thank you for confirming that you're a good student again. And we'll see you in a while, I guess.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I think Luis needs to. Oh, you're listening.
Yeah, he's got a note. He's listening.
Okay, so are we live now? Streaming, okay, we're streaming. I'm sorry for the dead air there. In any event, Mara, we wish to congratulate you on a very, very good job and dealing with an extremely difficult text that also is an extremely flawed text. And we feel that in so many cases you improve the text. There are certain clarifications that you need to provide, as indicated by Jane and also by Alejo, and they will be providing you with their input in emails. And but in any event, congratulations. We have decided to give you the grade of notable, which is an excellent grade. So congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Luis, la foto, Luis. Luis, la foto.
And Mara, if you have any questions, just let me know, going through this process. And I wish to say goodbye to everyone as well. Anyone who is listening in, thank you for being here for today.